Number 2, we currently have the equation of the circle, and they want us to identify the center of it and the radius. Okay, but like when you look at it as it is, can you identify the center and the radius? No, because currently it's in general form. To be able to identify the center and the radius, it has to be in standard form. So what's the very first thing we need to do to get it in standard form?
Add 4.
Right, this 4, which is the constant, needs to be moved to the other side. To move a -4, you add it. So it will become x squared plus y squared plus 2x minus 4y equals positive 4. Because when you move the constant across the equal sign, it was minus, so you added it over, which makes it positive 4. Okay, that's always step 1. What's step 2? Right, group your x's and group your y's. So when I write x squared, now instead of writing that next, I'm going to put the 2x beside it. And then I'll write y squared, and I'll put the minus 4y beside it. So that's step 2. Group the x's together, group the y's together. What's step 3? Right, this is where we really start the completing the square process. Because think about it. Isn't that like ax squared plus bx, but the c is missing? So we're looking for the c. So you leave a blank for it. Same thing for the y's. We have y squared minus 4y, but we don't have its constant value. Now, since you added in 2 blanks on this side of the equation, you have to do that on the other side of the equation. You have to keep the equations balanced. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. Yes. Okay, how do we fill in the blanks? Right. There's a formula that you have to remember to fill in the blanks. Shh, guys, remember, there were people not here yesterday. This is the first time they're seeing this. You take the b value, divide it by 2, and square it. So, for the x's, what is their b value? 2. Because remember, all quadratics are in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. So the b is 2. If you take 2 and divide it by 2, you get a 1. And when you square a 1, you get a 1. So since we add 1 over here, we add 1 over here. Now let's do the y's. What is the b of the y's? Negative 4. So negative 4 divided by 2 is, and negative 2 squared is, positive 4. The numbers that go in the blanks will always be positive, because when you square a number, no matter whether it started positive or started negative, when you square it, it's going to become positive. Because 2 positives make a positive, 2 negatives make a positive. Okay, so now on the right, you can see that you just add those up and they combine to be a 9. On the left side, we're now going to factor using the bubble method, but we're going to factor twice. We're going to factor the x trinomial, and we're going to factor the y trinomial. Now, what do we know about the 2 factors? They're going to match. They're going to be identical. So obviously to get x squared, we have to have x times x. And what numbers multiply to give you 1 and add to give you 2? 1 and 1. Now, the reason I know they have to match is because in the very next step, I want to be able to write it just 1 time. And since they match, you just square it to show that there's really 2 of them. Okay, now let's factor the y trinomial using the bubble method. So we need y times y to make the y squared. What numbers multiply to a positive 4 but add to a negative 4? Negative 2 and negative 2. Since there's 2 of them, you just write it once and square it. Now, don't we have the standard form of the equation of a circle? And now you're able to identify the center and the radius. What is the center? Right. It's always the opposite of what it looks like in the equation because of the minuses that are built into the equation. Okay, so if it's x plus 1, the h is negative 1. If it's y minus 2, the k is positive 2. And since it equals 9, what's the radius? 3, because 3 squared would make a 9. If you missed yesterday, you really need to watch yesterday's video because you missed a lot. Okay, once you've copied that, we'll try number 4. 4. We have the general form of a circle We want it in standard form. What do I need to do first? Which is, so to move it I have to subtract 9. So when I write that, well, I don't want to skip any steps right now because of the people who weren't here yesterday. Okay, so I move the constant. So that positive 9 gets subtracted over, and so now it's negative 9. Now step 2 is group the x's and group the y's. So I'm going to put those x terms together, and I'm going to put the y terms together. Okay, what's step 3? Make the blanks for each one. So x squared minus 10x plus blank plus y squared plus 6y plus blank. And then since I added 2 blanks in the left, I have to add 2 in the right, and I'm just going to have to do it like this because I've run out of room. Okay, how is it that we fill in the blanks? Right, you take your b value of the trinomial, divide it by 2, and square it. So for the x's, what's the b value? Negative 10 divided by 2, and when you square negative 5, 25. Since you added 25 over here, you add it over here. What is your b value for the y trinomial? 6 divided by 2, squared, right. So now on the right side is 25 because that negative 9 and positive 9 just cancel each other out. On the left side, I have to factor using the bubble method. Oh, I wrote too big. Okay, so I need to know 2 numbers that multiply to 25 and add to negative 10. X minus 5 and x minus 5 are the factors. And what 2 numbers multiply to 9 and add to 6? Positive 3 and positive 3. Okay, and since they match, and they always will, you're able to write the factor once and just square it. And now it's in standard form. It's the equation of a circle in standard form. What is the center? 5, negative 3. And what is the radius? 5. Because the square root of 25 is 5. Okay, why don't you go ahead and try 6 by yourself. I'll leave this up there in case you need to look back at it. So try. What's the first thing I do? Subtract the 9. Turn around and pay attention. Okay, so when I subtract the 9, it'll be negative 9 on this side. Then what do I do? Group them together. So x squared plus 6x plus y squared minus 2y equals negative 9. Then what do I do? Make the blanks. Okay, how do I fill in the blanks? B over 2 squared. For the x trinomial, what is the b value? Divided by 2? Squared? Okay, so I'm going to put a 9 in each of those blanks. As soon as the board wakes up. What is the b value of the y trinomial? Divided by 2? Negative 1 and squared, positive 1. Okay, so now on the right side, I see that the negative 9 and the positive 9 cancel each other out, leaving just 1. On the left side, I'm ready to factor. Right, the numbers that multiply to 9 and add to 6 are 3 and 3, and they both need to be positive. And then, of course, since you're factoring, you got to put x and x to make the x squared. So y times y, what numbers multiply to a positive 1 but add to a negative 2? Negative 1 and negative 1. Since they match, you can just write them once and square it. And so now we can see that the center is negative 3, positive 1. And the radius is 1, because the square root of 1 is 1. Okay, try number 8. Everybody try number 8. I'm now going to start combining some steps to save time. So, I'm going to go ahead in the first line, I'm going to group. I'm going to go ahead and make my blank. And I'm going to move that 16 to the other side, which will make it negative 16. Now I'm ready to fill in my blanks. And that's b over 2 squared. What is the b of this one? 6 divided by 2. 3 squared is 9. What is the b value of the y's? Negative 8 divided by 2. Negative 4. Negative 4 squared is 16. Those two cancel each other out, leaving 9. Now, don't I kind of already know that the two bubbles are going to match, the two factors are going to match? So go ahead and just write it once. What numbers multiply to 9 and add to 6? 3 and 3, but there have to be two of them, so you square it. What numbers multiply to 16 and add to negative 8? Negative 4 and negative 4, but you have to have two of them, so square. See how you can do all that work in two lines? So what is the center? Right, and what is the radius? 3, because the square root of 9 is 3. Go ahead and try number 10, and then we're moving on. Shh. Okay, guys, go ahead and turn to page 6. Turn to page 6. I don't know. It depends on how much talking y'all do. Well, we're about to learn something brand new, so you're not going to be able to go ahead. Okay, you really, really need to pay attention. Shh. Okay, you need to pay attention. Today we're going to start talking about the directrix and focus of parabolas. In geometry, we learned that a graph of a quadratic function forms a parabola. We learned how to use the vertex formula, which is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. Remember, a determined how the parabola opened and how skinny or wide it was. So the number right here, if it was positive, it opened the parabola up. If it was negative, it opened down. And also, depending on what number it was, determined how skinny or wide the parabola was. H and K is the vertex of the parabola, and it caused the vertex to shift left, right, up, and down. We have to now look at the parabola as a conic equation instead of vertex form. The focus is a point that is always located inside the parabola. Okay, the focus will always be inside the parabola. The directrix is a line that is always located outside the parabola. Okay, this is a focus. The focus is a point, and it's always inside the parabola. The directrix is a line, and the line is always outside the parabola. The focus and the directrix are the same distance away from the vertex, but in opposite directions. So, see, in this one, we have a parabola that opens up. That means the focus will be above it, because the focus always has to be within the parabola. The directrix is below it. Now, what this statement up here said is that from here to here is the same distance as from here to here. Okay, the focus from the vertex is the same distance as the directrix from the vertex. Always. In this one, the parabola opens down, so that puts the focus below the parabola and puts the directrix above it. But this distance is still the same. That distance and that distance are still equivalent. Okay, our job will be to graph a parabola when we are given a focus and directrix or a focus and a vertex. We will also be writing the equation for the parabola using a slightly different formula than we used in geometry. Okay, next page. The formula we are familiar with is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. Remember, a positive a value means the parabola opens up, like this. A negative a value means the parabola opens down. And then the numbers in the place of h and k are the vertex. The formula that we need to know for focus and directrix looks like this. Now, it's not that different. You can see that the k has now been moved over here, so it's minus k. And the a was replaced with 1 over 4p. Those are the only two changes. The a is replaced with 1 over 4p, and the k got subtracted over with the y. Okay, so let's do an example. Graph and write the equation for a parabola with a focus of 1, 0 and a directrix y equals negative 2. Start by plotting the focus and labeling it f. Okay, what's the focus that they gave me? 1, 0. So I'm going to go 1, 0, which is the right one. That's the focus, so I'm going to label it f. And the reason I need to label it is so that I don't get it confused later with the vertex. Alright, now we're going to draw the directrix. Y equals -2 is a line that cuts through the y-axis at -2. So if you have a line cutting through the y-axis at -2, it obviously makes a horizontal line. Okay, because to cut through the y-axis at -2 would look like that. It's cutting through the y-axis at -2. There's your directrix. Yeah. Okay, so what is the distance from the focus to the directrix? How many units is that? 2. The vertex will be directly between the focus and the directrix. So wouldn't the vertex have to be right here? And what is the distance from the focus to the vertex? 1 unit. What is the vertex? 1, -1, right? Because to get to it, you have to go right 1, down 1. So the coordinates of the vertex are 1, -1. Now we have an h and k to plug into the formula. Because isn't the vertex your h and your k? Okay? The distance from the vertex to the focus is actually equal to p. So what is p equal? 1. Okay, the distance from the vertex to the focus is your p-value. And that's 1 unit from the vertex to the focus. Our vertex is 1, -1. So that's our h and our k. Now we have the information needed to write the equation of this parabola. So let me raise it up so people in the back can see it better. Y minus k, which we know is -1. But if I put a -1 right here, won't it become +1? Equals 1/4p. Well, what's going to happen when you multiply your 4 by your p-value? It's just going to be 4, because 4 times 1 is 4. So this becomes 1/4. And then x minus h, what's the h value? 1, and then squared. Now you have to decide, does your parabola open up or down? Up, because look, isn't the focus always inside? So if the focus is above the vertex, the parabola opens up. So that means that this number is positive. Had it opened down, you would have had to have thrown a negative on that. Okay, so let's go back through what we did. The first thing we did was we did the information they gave us. They told us there was a focus of 1, 0, so we plotted it right there and labeled it F for focus. They told us we had a directrix of y equals -2. A directrix is always the line outside the parabola. And a line that crosses through the y-axis at -2 looks like that. We also know that the vertex is equal distance between those two. So if that's your focus and that's your directrix, the vertex has to be right here in the middle. The distance from the vertex to the focus is your p-value. So that's how we got p equals 1. And once we know that our vertex is 1, -1, that gives us the h and the k to plug in. And once we know p is 1, that gives us the p to plug in, and then we just write everything down. Okay, let's try another one. Go to the next page. Okay, graph and write the equation for a parabola with a focus of -3, +4, and a directrix y equals 8. So the first thing we need to do is plot the focus and label it F. So -3, 4 would be left 3, up 4. So right there is your focus. Okay, now we need to draw in the directrix. The directrix is always a line. Look at it outside the parabola. And a line that goes through the y-axis at 8 would be a horizontal line through 8. Because it has to cut across the y-axis at 8. Okay, so count the space between the focus and the directrix. How many spaces are between those? 4. So doesn't that mean that the vertex has to be located halfway in between? So right there. The vertex is always right in between the focus and the directrix. So what's the distance from the focus to the the focus to the vertex? 2 units. And isn't that your p-value? What is the vertex? Now that we've plotted it, write down its coordinates. Negative 3, 6. And isn't that your h and your k? So now we know everything we need to know. We know the distance from the focus to the vertex is 2 units, and that's our p-value. And we figured out where the vertex is. It's at negative 3, positive 6, and that's our h and our k value. So now we're ready to write the entire equation. So y minus k would be y minus what? 6 equals 1 over 4 times p would give you a 8, because your p-value is 2, and 4 times 2 is 8. And then x minus h, what is your h? And if you put a negative 3 right here, it'll make that plus 3. And then the only other thing you have to do at this point is, since your focus is below, you know your parabola opens down, which means that this a value has to be negative. Yep. I mean, for that problem, we're doing one more. Everybody got that copy? Yeah, I mean, it kind of seems hard at first, but then you realize it's kind of easy. Okay. This time, the example's a little bit different, because this time, they gave us a focus again, but they didn't give us the directrix, they gave us the vertex. So right away, they already gave us part of the equation. They gave us the h and the k. So first, let's plot the focus at negative 3, negative 5. That's it right there. There's your focus. And then we'll plot the vertex at negative 3, negative 3. And how far apart are those? 2 units. And what do we know about that number? It's your p-value. Okay, now we're going to draw in the directrix. Not that it's really critical. No, remember, the vertex is always right in the middle. So if here's... Right, so where would the directrix have to be? At negative 1, right? So we'll draw in the directrix at negative 1. Oh, wrong place. Okay, and not that knowing the directrix is critical to writing the equation, but they ask for the equation over right here. So what's the equation of the directrix? Y equals negative 1. Remember, it's just a line that crosses through the y at negative 1. So now look, we know the h, we know the k. Those were given to us right away, and we found out the p. The p is just the distance from the focus to the vertex, so we're ready to write the entire equation. Y minus k, which is, so a minus a negative will become a positive 3, equals 1 over 4 times p, which would give you 8, because 4 times 2 is 8, and then parenthesis x minus h would be another negative 3, which would turn that into a plus 3, and then is the parabola opening up or down? Down, because the focus is always inside the parabola, so that means it has to open down towards the focus, which makes your a value negative. Okay, we'll continue working on these tomorrow, so there's no homework. And then we're moving to parabolas that open left and right. You can switch out.